Have you ever tried to do something simple, but somehow everything around you suddenly became more interesting? This happens to me a lot. When I'm reading or doing something simple and repetitive, I can get distracted very easily. My phone, a sound around me, or even something sitting on my desk can pull my attention away. But here is the strange part. When I'm doing something more engaging or demanding, sometimes I can actually focus much better. So I started wondering, why can a simple task sometimes be harder to focus on? And how might this relate to ADHD? One possible explanation comes from something we learned in COGS101B, Perceptual Load Theory of Attention. The basic idea is that our perceptual capacity is limited. When a task has low perceptual load, it uses less of that capacity. This leaves some capacity available to process irrelevant information around us, and that can make distraction more likely. But when the task has high perceptual load, more of our perceptual capacity is used by the task. That leaves less capacity to process irrelevant distractors. So, higher perceptual load can sometimes reduce distraction. Interestingly, researchers have tested this idea in adults with ADHD in a study by Forster and colleagues. Participants searched for a target letter on a screen. Sometimes the search was simple, creating a low perceptual load. Other times, the target was surrounded by more complex letters, creating a higher perceptual load. At the same time, colorful cartoon characters sometimes appeared on the screen. These pictures had nothing to do with the task. They were simply distractors. The researchers found that adults with ADHD were especially distracted by these irrelevant images. But when perceptual load increased, the distraction effect became smaller. So perceptual load changed how strongly irrelevant information affected attention. At first I thought, maybe this explains why harder tasks sometimes make me focus better. But that explanation is too simple. Perceptual load is not the same thing as general task difficulty. Research suggests that perceptual load and cognitive load can affect attention differently. So we cannot simply say, the harder the task, the better the focus. Instead, the type of demand matters. Perceptual load may explain part of the story, but ADHD and attention are more complicated than that. Researchers also study the roles of boredom, effort, and task engagement. Research has found a relationship between ADHD symptoms and boredom. This may help us understand why repetitive or understimulating tasks can be especially difficult to stay engaged with. So sometimes, the problem may not simply be that a task is too easy. The way the task demands attention and how engaging it feels may also matter. There is another interesting side of ADHD attention: hyperfocus. Hyperfocus describes a state of very intense attention and deep engagement with a task. During hyperfocus, a person may become so absorbed in what they are doing that they notice less of what is happening around them. This may sound like the opposite of distraction, and that's exactly why ADHD attention is more complicated than simply saying, I can't focus. A scientist is still studying hyperfocus, so we should not treat it as a simple explanation for ADHD. So, does ADHD simply mean that someone cannot focus? The research suggests a much more complicated picture. Attention can change depending on the task, the type of information being processed, distraction, boredom, effort, and engagement. Perceptual load theory may help explain why irrelevant information sometimes captures our attention, and why increasing perceptual load can sometimes reduce distraction, but it is only one part of the story now. When I notice myself getting distracted during a simple or repetitive task, instead of only asking, why can't I focus? I can ask, what is it about this task that is affecting my attention? Because attention isn't just about whether we can focus. It's also about when, where, and under what conditions we focus.